Good morning. Our speaker, Brad Dacus, is here. So without further ado, I want to welcome you all. Good morning. Welcome to all our guests, our new members, all of our members, all of you, our veterans. How many veterans are in the room? Thank you for serving. Because you served, we are free. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So without further ado, I'm going to open the meeting, and I welcome up Barbara Witcher, our new chaplain and our new Americanism chair. So come on up, Barbara.
Well, we have registered, telephoned, walked, and said so many times, don't forget to vote, that we can't remember. From next week at this time, we're going to know, aren't we, whether our country, our beautiful country, is going to survive or not. Yes. Normally, and we still have a little ways to go. We're still working here. Normally, I talk to you from something from my heart, but today I'm not going to do that, which is why I'm standing here, because I'm going to read to you something. This, I think, is very appropriate for this particular meeting. I don't know whether all of you know this or not, but the great entertainer Johnny Cash wrote most of the songs he sang, but he did write one thing that he never sang. He made it so that it could be read. And I'm going to read it for you today. And I'm going to warn you, you may want to grab some Kleenex, because this is an amazing patriotic poem. It's called Ragged Old Flag by Johnny Cash, and I'm going to do the best I can to do justice to it. I walked through a county courthouse square. On a park bench, an old man was sitting there. I said, "Your old courthouse is kind of run down." He said, "No, it's fine for our little old town." I said, "Your flagpole has leaned a little bit, and that's a ragged old flag you've got flying on it." He said, "Have a seat." And I sat down. "Is this the first time you've been to our little town?" I said, "I think it is." He said, "I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag. You see, we got a little hole in that flag there when Washington took it over the Delaware, and it got powder burned the night Francis Scott Key sat watching it riding, oh, say, can you see? And it got a bad rip in New Orleans with Packingham and Jackson tugging at its seams, and it almost fell at the Alamo beside the Texas flag. But she waved on through. She got cut with a sword at Chancellorsville, and she got cut again at Shiloh Hill. There was Robert E. Lee, Beauregard, and Bragg, and the south wind blew hard on that old ragged flag. On Flanders Field in World War I, she got a big hole from a Bertha gun. She turned blood red in World War II. She hung limp and low by the time it was through. She was in Korea and Vietnam. Oh, she went where she was sent by her Uncle Sam. She waved from our ships upon the briny foam, and now they've about quit waving her back here at home. In her good land, she's been abused. She's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused. And the government for which she stands is scandalized throughout the land. And she's getting threadbare and wearing thin. But she's still in good shape for the shape she's in, because she's been through the fire before, and I believe she can take a whole lot more. So we raise her up every morning, and we bring her down every night. We don't let her touch the ground, and we fold her up just right. On second thought, I do like to brag, because I'm mighty, mighty proud of that ragged old flag. And I would add, long may she wave. Now will you please bow your heads, and we'll go to our Lord. Dear God, well, we put this in your hands. We know you are the maker of everyone and everything. And we know now, Lord, that we're going to know what's going on with our country. We've prayed and prayed, and you know that better than anyone. We just ask, Lord, that if we do win, that we not be arrogant, but be grateful. That we not be prideful, but be humble. And then we know that our work is just started as we hold our new legislature responsible for making the changes we need. And if, Lord, the thought is terrifying, but if we find we didn't win, take away our bitterness and our anger, and help us to recommit to continually fighting for our beautiful land, the land you gave us. We ask all of this, Lord, and we thank you so very much that we can be your people, and you are our God. Amen.
Thank you, Barbara. What a momentous poem from Johnny Cash, and a great prayer for us all. You're right. And God is in control. Now I'm going to have Carol Blanchard. Carol was our president for 3 years, and she hurt her foot recently, so she's hobbling a little. She doesn't want me to tell. She's going to lead the pledge.
Would you please stand and face the flag, which is on this side today? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So I have the honor and privilege to introduce our speaker today. His name is Brad Dacus, and he's the CEO and founder of Pacific Justice Institute. And Brad actually lives in Rancho Santa Margarita. He's local. We're very fortunate. And Brad, with the Pacific Institute, they're a really special law firm. He defends civil rights. His specialty is defending in civil rights. And just recently, over the last 5 to 10 years, parental rights because of the issues that face us. And Brad has recently, he has been able to open up more and more offices throughout the United States, and I think there are 23 now, Brad? 27. And the neat thing and unique thing about him, and I'll let him tell you more, is that he does so and he doesn't charge. So I just enamored of him. I've known him for years, and I'm just so grateful he's come to speak to us today. So, Brad, come on up. And John wants to take our picture, Brad.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
You want to hold on to it instead of?
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. Okay. Very good. So you think there's at least a dozen people I can sue here? Oh, I'm sorry. The lawyer joke. Let me just tell you about lawyers. We're always joked about. Everyone teases us as lawyers. And I just want to set the record straight. It's the 99% out there that give us 1% a bad reputation. He's got that? Okay, good. That was good. I speak at churches a lot. I do guest preaching too. And in one church I did that. They just go, yep. And I thought, oh dear. Some of them had some bad experiences, I guess, so with some lawyers. But it's easy to want to throw in the towel at times, isn't it? When you see all that's going on in our country, to just want to just give up. And I just want you to know the fact that my wife and I next month will be permanently moving to Costa Rica, in no way should you... No, that was a joke. That was a joke. Definitely a joke. Yeah, once I said that joke, and afterwards someone said, so when are you moving to Costa Rica? And I said, no, that was a joke. But seriously, this is a great time. I'm really glad I have this opportunity to speak, because we have so much to talk about. How many have heard of Pacific Justice Institute before? Raise your hand. Hi. Okay, great. How many of you get our email updates or mail updates? Raise your hand real high. Real high. Okay. Great, but many of you didn't raise your hands. So before I forget, they're being distributed on your tables, these little half sheets, like that. Raise it up high. Can you raise it up high for people? Okay, that looks right there. So if you could be so kind as to fill that out so we can keep you updated, it'd mean a lot to me personally as we take on these cases and do what we do. A little bit of my background. So it was in 1997 is when I started Pacific Justice Institute. And at the time, I was a Western Regional Coordinator for an organization back east called Rutherford, and everything was going really smooth. You know, I coordinated litigation. I had all the network of attorneys built up in 14 states at the time. And what happens in life when you're finally on cruise control and everything's really smooth? Yeah, a big cow gets in the middle of the road and you have to go left or right or have lots of hamburger meat. You know that line works much better in Texas. Okay, but anyway. So that's what happened. The national office calls me and says, Brad, we're going to shut down the last regional office, your regional office, but don't worry, we have a promotion for you. We want you to head up our public affairs office in Washington, D.C. You'll be the face of the organization. All media, radio, congressional testifying will all be done by you. And you'll also have a higher salary, larger staff, larger office, Washington, D.C. So I thought, I don't have to pray about this. This is an easy one. I'll say yes. And then I had insomnia, and I couldn't sleep. The next night, I still couldn't sleep. The next night, I still couldn't sleep. And finally, I realized, oh, shoot, I'm going to have to pray about this after all. And I did, and when I did, I really felt convicted that my real passion that God put on my heart was to make sure that people got the help where it was needed the most here on the West Coast. This is like the beaches of Normandy when it comes to the battle of our freedoms and liberties. Right? And I get that. So it's a real struggle we have out here. So with boldness and courage, I said, yes, Lord, I will rise to the call. I will rise to the challenge. I will boldly go forward on several conditions. Because I was scared, okay? So I said I need to have free office space donated, free computer system donated, keep me on the radio stations for free. We have to be in the black in just 5 months, and I'm never going to charge anyone ever for anything we ever do. I thought it was very reasonable with my fleece, you know? And I think God has a sense of humor. So he came through on everything, and it was really incredible because I didn't tell anyone about the office space, free office space. I didn't tell anyone. I told God, if God gives it, great. If not, hey, I got my bags packed. I'm going to be on the boat. I'm going to flee Nineveh. I'm ready. So some of you got that. Nineveh, Jonah, whale. Okay, gotcha. Okay, just making sure. So anyway, so we're closing up the office. It's the last month, closing up the office. And my assistant comes in, Pamela, and she says, Brad, before she comes in, I get a phone call. I answer the phone. The guy says, yeah, I heard you needed free office space. I have free office space. And I was sort of a little upset because I thought for sure I wasn't going to get this thing, Thought, how'd you know I need office space? And so I didn't have a good attitude, did I? And my assistant comes in, Pamela, she goes, put him on hold, put him on hold. So I put him on hold. And I said, what, Pamela, what? She goes, well, you're not aware of this, but I knew our lease was going to be expiring here. I knew you always like to save money for Rutherford, so I thought I'd surprise you. And I called KYCC Radio, asked them to put a free public service announcement that we're looking for free office space. And I'm looking, I know Pamela. That was not Pamela, okay? And then I picked up the phone and I said, yes, we need office space. And Pacific Justice was born. And Pacific Justice Institute, fast forward, we now have 27 offices in 20 states. As I was walking in here, I was a little delayed. Yes. All of it, by the way, all of it's free office space. We don't pay for any of the office. Almost all of it's free utilities because I'm frugal. And but on the way in here, I was talking to our attorney out of our Miami office on one of our cases. I mean, things are moving so fast. And it's so exciting to see all that God's doing and that's happening and moving forward. But we have offices, Miami. We have, of course, all along the West Coast, Seattle, Portland, 5 offices in California for good reason. Okay. And then we have a number of other states, Nevada, Arizona, Idaho, Colorado, Texas, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, North Carolina, New Jersey, New York, 2 offices in New York for good reason, and Boston, and Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You sort of see a trend here, trend pattern. They're blue blotches. We don't go generally where we're wanted. Almost all of our offices, with the exception of Mississippi, that's just where it ended up, they're almost all blue blotches on the map. And I like to make it so that Satan has no place to go for vacation. That's my goal. And also these offices give us a huge footprint, the biggest footprint of any organization in the country, the biggest for a ground game, to be able to make sure that no city council, no school board meeting, no supervisors meeting anywhere can feel safe from Pacific Justice Institute. And it's very exciting to do that. In addition to those offices and the attorneys, we also have a fantastic radio show called the Dacus Report. I don't know if you guys have heard it or not, on 107.9 FM. Anyone ever listen to 107.9 FM? It's a good station. I like it. Okay. The show is just awesome. I mean, I think it's my favorite show to listen to. The guy who does it is fantastic. I mean, he is like, okay, it's my show, but it's a good show. And it's heard on over 800 stations and transmitters across America. So and it's all, I might add, all without charge. We don't pay for it. They want it. And I've talked to stations before, and they'll say, well, you know, we charge to have things aired on our program, on our station. And I said, I totally understand that. I said, but you see, our show's not about raising money for PJI. We don't use it for that. Our goal is to serve people and empower people to know what their rights are and how we're here to serve them. So when you have us on your radio station, you're acting like a lifeline, literally, to all the people in your audience, people of faith in particular, who need representation without charge. So the only question is, are you willing to be that lifeline to enable us to serve all the people of Las Vegas, for example? And they often, more likely than not, they've been saying, yes, you're right, and they put us on. So free office space, free airtime, free utilities, and then attorneys who volunteer their time give us a big bang in our budget every year and making a real big impact. Right now we have 115 cases in active litigation. That's a lot of people. And I'm always looking for new people to sue. What's your name again? Is it Linda? Linda, so nice. We'll talk afterward. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. Anyway, it's real easy to to get lost in all that we're doing, but it's exciting. I'm going to talk about some of our cases, and then I want to talk about where I see things going politically. I used to work for U.S. Senator Phil Gramm in Washington, D.C., before going to law school. I was his legislative assistant, but I was also pretty much in the spin room, if you will. And I've always had a desire to sort of keep up with what's going on with regard to expectations and in politics. I was once going to be a politician myself. But my wife said, no, it says, your skin's not thick enough. And I can sue people with no problem, but to be stabbed in the back by someone in my own party, I don't know if I could do that. So, but nonetheless, we're having a big impact. So what are some of the challenges that we see that we're facing today? First is with regards to, let's talk about religious freedom, and specifically with regard to churches and synagogues. We love to defend churches and synagogues because they're under attack. You know, in Americans' history, synagogues actually were under attack before churches, you know, particularly in different parts of the country. And but now, unfortunately, I have to say that churches are pretty up there, right up there with synagogues. They're pretty much all under attack now, and in different ways, and depending on your communities. And of course, the most notorious attack on places of worship is the state of California. They deserve the prize. And Governor Gavin Newsom, he deserves the royal prize. When he decided during the pandemic, mind you, I give a lot of grace looking backwards. It's easy to look in the rearview mirror, right? But when he decided to shut down churches initially, along with everything else, I'm like, all right, I'll give him a week or two. My wife said, no, it's going to be longer than that. I said, no, it's going to be like 2 weeks. That's it. And then I said, okay, honey, all right, May 31. It's going to be all over on May 30. Sweetheart, after the election, we're not going to. Well, then I learned just to keep my mouth shut. But what happened was, initially just about everything was shut down. But then they decided to open up liquor stores and pot shops and shopping malls and restaurants. The churches and synagogues, oh, no. You're too dangerous. Now, I don't think viruses really discriminate on whether it's a house of worship or a liquor store, right? Or a restaurant. I don't get that. It doesn't make sense. And so we were giving emergency counsel to churches, and at times they said, we can't meet anymore in the school. I said, really? But the restaurant's open, right? Think you can work out a deal with the restaurant to have the restaurant open on Sunday morning? They usually open at noon or 11. Have them open up Sunday morning, and you can have a restaurant gathering that happens to include maybe some sermon or singing. And so we were very creative in helping them get around and helping them open up a lot earlier. But Gavin Newsom was one of the worst in the country. So we went ahead and challenged him. We filed a lawsuit, a major lawsuit. And it was at the same time that Amy Coney Barrett was being nominated to the Supreme Court. And we counted the numbers and we thought, we've got it. All we need is one more on the Supreme Court and we'll win. We filed a lawsuit. We sought an emergency injunction to open up the churches and synagogues. What happened? We lost. Then we appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. What good thing can come from the Ninth Circuit? I just remind people that if in the Old Testament God can speak through a donkey. Anyway, so we've won a number of cases in the Ninth Circuit before, like in defending in God we trust on our currency and some other big cases. But this time, the Ninth Circuit let us down. And they said, nope, governors can have that discretion to discriminate, shut down places of worship, treat them differently than everyone else. We were ready for that. And as soon as it came down, we filed an immediate emergency writ request with the United States Supreme Court. Now, an appeal or certiorari, it takes months, right? And then you may not get granted. It's 1 in 100 chance. Well, an emergency writ is usually like if someone's about to get the death penalty and there's new evidence saying they're innocent. I mean, it's like 1 in 10,000 chance they'll ever take up the case, right? And it's almost like always like a death penalty case. And frankly, I didn't think it was going to go up. I didn't think we were going to get it granted. Well, it did. It was granted. And as it turns out, the Supreme Court reviewed it. Actually, Justice Kagan, she could have just sniffed it out and said, no. She could have denied it. It would have been done. Because she's over the Ninth Circuit. They sort of, for emergency writ purposes, they sort of divide up the circuits. But she incredibly said, I think we should have the whole Supreme Court hear this. Even though she's not on our side. Right? She's almost always on the other side, with a few exceptions. So she said, we'll have the whole Supreme Court hear it. Supreme Court hears it in closed chamber. And Kevin Snyder, our chief counsel, is so good. He had this all prepped ahead of time. Everything, the docs, everything for the emergency writ. And in just 3 days, they came out with their decision. 3 days. And they ruled 6-3. Open those churches and synagogues now, Governor Gavin Newsom. And they were opened, and you guys know what happened. We started having freedom again and liberty. And we've been in this battle and fight. We have so many cases I could mention along those lines, but this case was instrumental because it sent shockwaves across the country, saying very loudly to these blue state governors, the Constitution is never to be put on the shelf, ever. no matter what the situation, no matter what the emergency, you will be held accountable to the Constitution. And we're so glad about that. So we've also been involved in many cases dealing with church land use zoning cases and synagogue zoning cases. We had a synagogue in Martinez a number of years ago. They were told they wanted to build, and they were told that they'll be allowed to build, but there's 21 land use restrictions. But they only applied to just one day of the week. Take a guess. There's the synagogues. Saturday. How'd you guys guess that? Saturday, you're just like, the tyranny is just so predictable, right? And so we stepped in, we represented them, we got all 21 land use restrictions removed, and the synagogue went forward. Well, recently, yes, as you can clap on that one. But recently, there was a classic case out of Salinas. Now, how many of you, this is really funny, so before I ask that question. So Salinas, hold it closer. Can you guys hear me better this way? Okay, good. Definitely better? Okay, good. Hello? Hello? No, I'm just here. I love doing that with the sound system, and people, they get all confused. It's so much fun. Okay. So, thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. Because it's much better to get that cue now than after I'm done. So I appreciate that. So I'll start from the beginning. No, I won't do that. Okay. So Salinas, there was a church, and it was leasing a facility, a building, in downtown Salinas. And they were growing like crazy. And the boys had to have their Bible study in the alley behind the church. I mean, they just didn't have room. And finally, and then guess what? Across the street on Main Street, just right across, a building came up for lease. And the church inquired, and the man says, if you want to buy it, your church, I'll sell it to you. They buy the church. But the Salinas Planning Commission, the city council, said, no, we're not going to let you move across the street and use the first floor at all, because churches aren't fun enough. Now, that's not me paraphrasing. That's the word they use, F-U-N, fun. Churches aren't fun enough. And we in Salinas want our downtown to be someplace that tourists will want to go. How many of you have taken a vacation to Salinas, downtown Salinas? No. You go to Santa Cruz. How about Santa Cruz? Raise your hand. Monterey area? Okay. Salinas is maybe a gasoline station stop. I'm just telling you. That's me. I've been through it. Never stopped. But I'm sure wonderful people in Salinas. So if you're from Salinas, I don't mean to insult you. I'm sure great people in Salinas. But even you know, that's why you're here, right? Okay, never mind. So we went ahead and filed a lawsuit. And the federal judge, to my shock, said, yeah, fun's a good enough reason to keep out churches. I was stunned. They have to show a compelling state interest. And they had a post office in Main Street. Since when is a post office fun? I get frustrated when I go to a post office, don't you? And you're like sitting there waiting and waiting. It's like, they could pull up those stamps a little faster. I'm just telling you. So anyway, we then appeal it to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the donkey spoke and reversed and said, this is invalid. You cannot keep a church from downtown ministering to that community. And we won. Now, recently, we had another big case. It's ongoing. It's down in San Diego, much closer to here. A church, it's called Foothills Christian Fellowship. And this church has a private school. It also has a preschool. At least it had a preschool. Here's what happened. The state of California, it's the county's CPS, Child Protective Services, decided that they wanted to investigate the school because these are preschoolers, right? They heard that some of the preschool children were not wearing their mask. Yes, I'm shocked as well. Something just fell, I know. So even the wreath knew that was bad. So we went ahead, and so they brought in, these social workers came in with their SWAT team to investigate. No warrant at all. They came in, they required questioning of the teachers about the mass and operations. They went through the individual personal files of the children without the parents knowing about it, dealing with personal issues. They also inquired as to whether or not the children were forced to sing religious songs or hear stories from the Bible, because that is actually illegal in California for any licensed preschool, including those that are part of a church or synagogue. Yeah. So they violated the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth, the Sixth Amendment, and the First Amendment. Outrageous. So we went ahead and we have filed a lawsuit on their behalf, and it's a big case because if we prevail, we'll be putting government in its place against this kind of tyranny. So this is a big case. You want to watch that one. Then we're also dealing with the craziness happening in public schools. How many used to be a public school teacher? Raise your hand. Okay. You guys know what I'm talking about. Has public schools, have they changed since you started teaching the content, the agenda? Yes, dramatically, right? That may be why some of you decided to retire, maybe. I mean, it's very frustrating. Well, it's getting worse and worse. And let me just give you an example about two public school teachers we're defending right now. It's Grants Pass, Oregon, and they decided to object to the policies about pronouns and having to lie to parents if a child is undergoing gender identity dysphoria or confusion. They were told you need to lie to the parents and say, oh no, that's not happening. Now, as a parent, I would be really ticked off about this. So we went ahead and we were called in to represent them, and they were fired, by the way. Not because of anything they did on the job or said on the job, but because on their own time, on their own website, in their communications, they talked about what model policy should be, respecting the conscience of a teacher, not to have to use pronouns that they think violates their conscience against a child. It's just, in fact, it's just wrong to affirm something that you know is harmful to a child. Studies show that if a transgender child who has gender identity dysphoria is just left alone and not encouraged, more than 7 out of 10 will no longer have that dysphoria by the time they hit high school. But if government gets involved, like is happening, and they're encouraging it, those numbers go way down. And what happens to someone who goes down this track? They need love and compassion, right? It's a mental condition. But unfortunately, the stats are horrific because majority will not live to see their 30th birthday, because the procedure of changing does not eradicate depression or suicide. And that's why many professionals are raising objections. Well, these two teachers, they just want to teach. They don't want to lie to teachers. They don't want to encourage something that violates their conscience. And because they expressed their attitude and never mentioned the school they taught at even, or the school district, somehow the administration found out and they were fired. We filed a lawsuit. We got their jobs back, and now we're continuing to sue for back pay that they were denied. That's a big case. Unfortunately, we're going to have probably many of these cases involving pronouns of people losing their jobs because they will not bow the knee to this agenda in violation of their conscience. And I'm very sympathetic for those people in that circumstance. We also are going to bat for prisons and, people who work for prisons. And this case is dealing with a man who was at the administration of a prison in Iowa. And as it turns out, he had a Bible study online 7 years ago. Well, someone did homework on him. Now, he had nothing wrong in his file. He was doing a great job. Spotless file. But someone somehow, they found he was a person of faith, and they went on a witch hunt. And they couldn't find anyone to complain about him among his peers or even the prisoners, or not badgering anyone. So they went online, and they found that 7 years ago he was doing a Bible study, and in the Bible study he was going through Scripture, and the Scripture addressed an issue of the day that they didn't like. You know what kind of issues we're talking about probably, because you're in California. You know what I'm talking about. So what happened? He was fired. He was fired because of his speech and expression outside the workplace. Well, I know the spam happen all the time, don't they? How many get those potential spams all the time? I get them all the time. If someone can figure out how to just get rid of them, let me know. But anyway, so as it turns out, we at Pacific Justice are representing him. And the reason we are is because we don't believe anyone as a condition to work for the government has to surrender their First Amendment rights and believe what the government tells you to believe. That's great for communist China. Yeah, in order to work for the Chinese government, you have to say, yes, we agree with communism and we agree with the communist way and the Chinese. That may work for Venezuela, Cuba. That's not the United States, right? So we're going to bat for that against that kind of tyranny, not just on a federal level, but also on a local level, all throughout the United States. We had an interesting case it was a tragic case actually, involving two women. They were, both of them were Christians and had sincere religious convictions and beliefs, but they made some bad decisions. They were in prison in New York. And there's 3 to a cell. And the third person to join their cell was a biological man. Oh, yeah. Now, more than 70%, some show 85%, different surveys, of men who claim to feel like they're a woman and may actually have dysphoria, they're still sexually turned on by women. You just put him in a cell with 2 women. And unfortunately, something very tragic happened to both of them, both women. And we at Pacific Justice are now going to bat for them against this egregious violation of their human rights and dignity over their bodies. So then we have parents' rights. We have so many cases dealing with social workers trying to take kids from parents because the parents are not affirming gender identity dysphoria confusion or same-sex sexual activities and lifestyles. Because of that, they're losing their children. Since when is that a tolerant society, right? Shouldn't parents be able to keep their kids, love their kids through it, and maybe get them counseling? Oh, that's right. That's illegal in California. But we at Pacific Justice help psychologists be able to work through that and still provide good counseling. So we at Pacific Justice have been involved in those kind of cases. We had one case involving, it was a 16-year-old girl, and she decided that she expressed to her teacher that she goes, I sort of really feel like I'm a boy. So she had dysphoria. It was told to the social worker who then took her from her family because her family were a Christian family. And the state was getting custody, guardianship, so they can begin the procedure of surgically removing body parts and giving injections, which was going to cause permanent sterilization in a matter of months. We were told, we went right into court, we halted it. And it took about 2 years of litigation, maybe not quite 2 years, about 1.5 years. And at the end of it, the young lady told the judge, Your Honor, actually, I've changed my mind. I don't think I want to be a boy after all. Had we not intervened, it would have been tragic. And so those are some of the challenges that we're facing at Pacific Justice. With regards to pro-life clinics, helping women, these are wonderful places to volunteer to help. They're doing great work across the country. Well, guess what? Since the reversal of Roe versus Wade, the state of California and other blue states are going on witch hunts to shut down the pro-life clinics. And that's what they're trying to do. The 2 largest in California have contacted us. They're getting subpoenas from the Attorney General of California there's no criminal charges. They're trying to find something that they're doing wrong to justify shutting them down. It's a witch hunt. And if they get away with it, they're going to go with all of them. They're going to try to shut them all down. In blue states, we're going to try to emulate that. We were contacted. It's heavy-duty lifting to go against the Attorney General. That's what we're doing to keep open these wonderful pro-life clinics in California and around. Now, I'm not going to, I have a lot more cases. I'm going to skip ahead, though, because for sake of time, and I also happen to be hungry. So, but let me just touch on some things. Anyway, we're helping also on the legislative front. We at Pacific Justice, with our offices all across the country, we've already helped 6 states draft legislation protecting girls in locker rooms and from having to compete with boys. I mean, this just is crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's just, I like to think, well, maybe I'm just getting old. You say, oh, I can't believe what's happening. No, this is just crazy. It's illogical. It makes no sense at all. If you were to go back in the 70s and tell the women's rights movement, you say, guess what? Your party is going to try to force women to be naked and shower in front of men. And they're going to force women to compete against men instead of just among themselves. They'd go, no, not the Democrats. Oh, no. They're for women's rights. They're trouncing on women's rights and women's dignity in the deepest way with their policies. And we Republicans understand human rights. We don't trounce on human rights. We are the party of human rights and civil liberties. And there's a whole history for that. So we've helped 6 states already draft legislation on that. We also have another division. It's called our Church Engagement Office. And our Church Engagement Office is working with churches to get them to do voter registration Sundays. We have over 500 that have done voter registration Sundays for this election. They're in California, Nevada, and Arizona. Why did we include Arizona and Nevada? There's 2 big Senate races that can impact who controls the Senate. We have over 15,000 new registered voters just through what we did in our voter registration campaign. That alone could be a whole organization. But we at Pacific Justice are doing it. One great reason we're successful is because churches and synagogues trust us. We don't fly in to say, how can we use them and how can we manipulate them or whatever. We've been serving them and serving them and serving them without charge. So when we say, this is something you can do that can help us defend you, they go, where do I do it? How do I do it? And we do the follow-up, and it's really working and it's making an impact. Now, as far as this election, let me just give you some of my predictions. I watch things very carefully, not just the polls, but also I watch electionbettingodds.com. Now, if some of you have an issue with gambling, don't go there. Just forget I just said that. And I'm not a gambler. I'm too cheap. I'm a sore loser. But I go there and I also look at the polls and the trend line with the polls along with the election betting odds, who look at what's projected to happen. And so far, they project that the Republicans will have 53 Senate seats. That said, there could be an initial, there's 3 others that are in play. In addition to, of course, solidifying Arizona, which is now 75% probability that we'll win Nevada. There's a 10% greater likelihood than the Democrats that will win Arizona. In Georgia, there is now a 20% greater likelihood that we'll win in Georgia. More than 20% likelihood we'll win in Pennsylvania. That would give us 53 if those all. But in New Hampshire, we've got a 43% chance that we'll win in New Hampshire, the Senate seat. So, and then Washington State and Colorado, those are in play as well now. So we could have up to 56 new, as far as Senate places, which gives us 6 more which is so important because if any of our justices on the Supreme Court passed away, heaven forbid, with the exception of, okay, no, I won't say that. No, she'll be off soon enough, okay. I've said enough, I shouldn't say that. Anyway, but yeah, I definitely said too much. Okay, but anyway, so, but if someone, let's say Justice Alito or Justice Thomas suddenly had a heart attack, if things stay the way they are with Republicans with only 50, what happens? Then he gets replaced with another Justice Jackson, a lady who argued for partial birth abortion in court. Very extreme leftist. That would be a disaster. Or another Sotomayor. That would be a huge disaster. And she's the one I think that we're going to see replaced before 2028. That's my expectation for different reasons. Well, I think she won't be on the court anymore, let me just put it that way, in 2028. But that's just because of my probability. I'm into probability and statistics, and but because of my audience, I'm not going to get into my details. So anyway, but I think that's what's going to happen. So, but if that happened, then what happens? They get one more justice on the Supreme Court. Roe versus Wade gets flipped back again. And then we have states adopting reasonable laws, 15 weeks or heartbeat, like things that the majority actually of Americans favor, suddenly being truncated by judicial activism. Religious freedom, suddenly truncated and reversed, and restoration of the Lemon Test, which has been so oppressive towards religious freedom. Just, that's how close we are. And that's why it's so important that we get the Senate. And we at Pacific Justice, as you can tell, are working on that, moving ahead. Governorships to watch. There's about 6 states where there's about a 25% probability that we could flip those governorships. New Mexico, Minnesota. Yeah, go ahead and serve. Thank you. In fact, if you could start right here. There's someone who's really, thank you. And then so I'm almost done, especially if the food's coming. So, in fact, if dessert, this person loves dessert. I'm just saying. So New Mexico, Wisconsin, Michigan is really in play. New York is in play. Maine is also in play. Even maybe Pennsylvania. We'll see. Yeah, okay. So, but that's a pot for the governorship. But I think we got the Senate. I think we're going to win the Senate seat. So, and anyway, about Costa Rica. No. She said, what about California? I don't know what's going on in I've seen things, in Orange County, I see some great things happening. I think Kathy Sanchez, she's running against a Republican though, isn't she? I shouldn't say that. No. Yeah, that's right, I'll switch it. Yeah, thank you. So Katie Porter, I think the odds are right now, it looks like Katie Porter is a good chance she's going to lose. Looks like Mark Levin is a good chance she's going to lose. Do you know why they're desperate? You know how you can tell? When they asked for Biden to come in and campaign for him. Really? That's like a Democrat in 1976 or in 1980 asking for Jimmy Carter to come and campaign. It shows an element of desperation. We're seeing Biden in Pennsylvania and some of these places where we're seeing some really good chance for flipping. And when that happens, and I think we are going to prevail in a number of places, and there's going to be a nice sweep in the House of Representatives, about a 90% chance that we're going to take the House. When we do, we need to make our congressmen and congresswomen accountable to do what they've pledged to do, and rein in government, bring forth justice with the Department of Justice and the FBI, and I think they get the message. They know why they're being sent there, and I am very excited, and I'm very optimistic we're going to see great things. Once again, I can see some of you may not have filled it out yet, and it really means a lot to me personally. If you just fill that out, it really makes me happy. So that little half sheet, love to keep you updated. We have everything encrypted. We don't sell our database. China will never get it, or the government. But I'd love to keep you guys updated. If you can, if you want to support our work, thank you. Please keep us in your prayers. And let's remember that at the end of the day, the issue in history is never whether or not you were on the winning team. It was never whether or not you were on the side that won the battle. The question was, were you in the battle? And did you fight? And history warrants recognition for everyone who chooses to fight. Let's choose to fight. Let's have victory. God bless you all. Thank you very much. Oh, questions? Do anyone have any questions? Let me start my billables. No, excuse me. I'm not timing anyone. Go ahead. Yes, question. You, sir, in the very, very back. It's okay, go ahead. Just speak from the diaphragm. Oh, any advice on the school board? So what about, do I like him or her? Oh, her. I don't know anything about her. Let me just give you some, I'm going to give you some help. That's a very good question. I forgot this, so thank you. If you want voter guides, this is really easy. I use voter guides, right? So I go to our website, pji.org, right? And you can click, and there'll be like voter guides. And you can click there, and you'll see one from Election Forum that is for California. But then you'll see also below it, biblicalvoter.com, and you can click California, and there'll be a whole bunch of different voter guides. And I use those for school board races, et cetera. And now, if you can't, for whatever reason, look at the voter guides, another easy way is put in the school district. So I put Capistrano Unified School District, candidates, endorsements, teachers union. Teacher union endorsements, you just put those words in. And it'll pop up the teacher union endorsements for candidates for the school board. And then you just make sure you don't vote for them. And that's a real safe way to go. And I said that on my radio show. I said, just go, put that in there, find out who the union endorses, and yeah, there's occasionally you're going to make a mistake. There's occasionally they'll go ahead and approve someone that's good. But 99% of the time, 98% of the time, they usually choose bad people. So that's what I do. And so that's how I would do it. Also, the voter guides, PJI, P for Pacific, J for Justice, I for Institute.org, and you'll see a banner thing going around with different screens. And so it may take 2 or 3 times before you click it in time, but it's pretty slow. But it'll be like voter guides. You click that, and you can get all that information, because that's what I used. Oh, have you done your work? Oh, have you really? That's good. And you got to be careful, because like in the assembly race, there's like 2 Republicans running against each other. And one of them, but there's one in the general, because the 2 Republicans, you guys don't have it in yours, I guess. We had one, and one of the Republicans gave money, contributions to Obama campaign. I'm like, so that was, anyway. This is your voter guide. Oh, this is good. Okay, good. This is really, these are good. These are the same things I voted for. I mean, the ones in my district, so that's good. So, anyway, any more questions? Yes, ma'am. Yes. And Brad Dacus. No, in addition, we also have a big gala. We had Governor Mike Huckabee and Charlie Kirk, and everyone who's on our mailing list, who filled those out, received information about our big gala, and it was absolutely fantastic. Yeah, filet mignon and lobster bisque, and So anyway, just feel free. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
How close is California to accepting Sharia law?
Yeah, I don't think California will ever accept Sharia law, because the left is so extreme on their immoral new society that I don't think it will even accommodate that. I think there's some places where we'll have pockets of Sharia law, and that exists. And we at Pacific Justice, there was a pocket of school district, public school district. It had all like Islam Sharia law being implemented. And so then what we did is we found an alternative school that submitted to have an alternative religion, and we sent our demand letter, and they quickly got rid of the Sharia law school, the Sharia school, because, so we've dealt with that issue. I don't think that's as big of an issue because society is changing so fast. I don't think that's as big of a threat. But if you lived in like Deerfield, Michigan, I mean, where it's just, if you're not Muslim, you're risking your life. You ever show your faith, it could be fatal. So, yes, sir.
Question?
Yes. Yes.
You had a case, Trader Joe had fired a man because of his religious conviction. How did that turn out?
Yes, that is still in litigation. He was fired because he didn't want to wear a mask, and they weren't requiring masks, and they accommodated. No, it was a vaccine. He was wearing a mask, but he had to be vaccinated. Okay, but the store's open, right? And so that was. So he said, "Look, I'll wear a mask and everything." They said, "Okay, we'll accommodate you, no problem." But then they, right after that, had an emergency management meeting, and said everyone must attend, and you have to be in person. Up till then, it was big Zoom, right? But you have to be in person, and you have to be vaccinated. He said, well, I'll be a Zoom. No, that's not allowed. I'll be in the back with, wear a mask and keep my distance. No, that's not allowed. And it's required, or you're fired. And they fired him. So we sued him. Trader Joe's also had another employee that was told that he couldn't teach Sunday school anymore. Too dangerous. Too dangerous. Yeah, be sure right there, too. That's real important. That person's really important. Extra gravy, please. No, I'm teasing. So next one. Yes, sir.
I had a question. In terms of parental choice in education, or freedom of choice in education, does your law firm get involved in any of those cases?
Yes. We are strong supporters of parental rights, hence parental choice in education. In fact, one thing that we did before the pandemic even started, we started a campaign to educate churches and synagogues on how they can start what I call homeschool co-ops in their facilities, like, the Little House on the Prairie kind of thing, and get those things going, and they are booming. Churches are stepping up, I think synagogues too, to start these co-ops where kids can be homeschooled, particularly by parents who both work or for whatever reason they can't homeschool on their own. This is very viable, and this is booming across America. One of the greatest things about the pandemic was an explosion, an exponential explosion of homeschooling. And we have it's great. We'll have more Charlie Kirks than we know what to do with, I think. Yeah. He's a fireball. He's great. Yes.
I would like to find out how we know where all those people from Afghanistan went and where all these immigrants are going, who's taking care of them. We know nothing about what's happening.
Right. Unfortunately, there are thousands of unvetted, properly vetted Muslim Afghan refugees. I'd say most of them are peaceful. They've seen violence in the name of their faith. They've seen it. A lot of them are turned off by what they've seen, of course. But nonetheless, there's a real risk there, and that's with the State Department. Let me tell you what Pacific Justice did. I'm glad you asked that. There were about 100 Christian Afghan refugees. They weren't sent to the United States. They're the most persecuted group, by the way, even in the former government. So they managed to get out, and they're in another Muslim country, where they were in a concentration camp, a refugee camp, not allowed to leave, didn't know where they were going to go. The Biden administration was resisting them coming to the United States, of course. We were called by a Baptist mission organization, and we stepped in. Make a long story short, they're now in the U.S. and Canada, and they're working with the Baptist missionary organization to specifically target and start churches in these Muslim Afghan refugee communities. And it's been fantastic. That was a recent victory we just had. And if you fill out that half sheet, you'll get updated on all our cases. We have so many cases. It'll be very encouraging, actually, because we usually win. 90% of the time we win, because I'm a sore loser. Last question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Brad, for a really fine speech. I'm sure I speak
And as an
for
attorney,
everyone.
most of it was true, too.
Good. Yeah, I know from my own personal experience that the vast majority of Reformed and religiously conservative synagogues are Democrats. These are, in some cases, very radically liberal. I'm curious, why would they seek out your organization? Because these congregations, in most cases, will support people like Gavin Newsom come hell or high water.
Right, you're right. And there's a distinction of different kinds of, just like there are different groups of Christians, different groups of Jewish people, faith. We're right now representing an Orthodox Jewish school in New York that has a curriculum that's about 2,000 years old. And New York says, no, it has to meet our new curriculum guidelines regarding all this liberal social stuff. So we're representing them and saying, no, this is their right. And I think it's a great case. But a lot of us is getting out the information to those more liberals, synagogues, for them to say, hey, we'll represent you, we'll defend you, we're for religious freedom. And a lot of them have just been Democrat all their lives, and that's how they vote. I think we're going to see, however, the trend line shows a larger and larger percentages are becoming Republican, because they see that the Democrat Party is actually filled with anti-Semitism, exclamation mark. I mean, big time. The Hamas, the PLO lovers, those who are for radicals with the Palestinian, right, they control the Democrat Party. And then they even have people in the Biden administration, they were in the Obama administration as well were. So Israel doesn't trust the Democrat Party. I know Benjamin Netanyahu would love to see Trump win in 2024. So I think we're going to see that trend line continue. Also in the Latino community, their values are much more paralleled with the Republicans. We're going to continue. About 50% are Republican now. Unbelievable. So we're seeing a huge shift. I'm very optimistic on the future, and even in many in the Asian community in the past are shifting because they're realizing how much discrimination has been taking place by the Democrats against the Asian community in terms of education and opportunity and employment. And there's a great Supreme Court case that's going to be ruling on that. So Republicans are the party of freedom, of equal opportunity, of liberty. And I think more and more Americans are seeing that, and I'm very optimistic in the future. Let's be faithful. Let's vote. Let's continue to pray for our nation. I encourage your prayers for our work at PJI. And if you fill those out, we'll collect those. Just leave them at the table. We'll collect them later on, or you can hand them to me. God bless you, and let's enjoy an awesome meal. Thank you, Lord. God bless. Bye-bye.